This is the story of cars. It's not about how they work. It's about what happens when you love a car. Anyone who has ever loved their car will tell you that something happens when you own a car for a while. Sometimes the car acquires a personality. Not every car will. Some cars are just metal and machinery, but some become more. So today on Book vs. Movie, I'm looking at Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, comparing the book from 1964 to the movie from 1968. Why am I covering this rather old and somewhat forgotten title? I'm covering it now mostly because I think this magical flying car is the direct ancestor to the flying car in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. J.K. Rowling liked to reference other classic children's literature in her books, and the flying car that saves Ron and Harry bears a lot of the hallmarks of Chitty. It's also a great kids' book. You may not know this, but the book was written by Ian Fleming, so if you've ever wondered what a children's book would be like if it were written by the creator of James Bond, this is that book. Chitty is a magical children's version of a classic Bond car, complete with mysterious knobs that have unknown functions. It was the last book Ian Fleming wrote before he died, after having written 9 James Bond novels. It was written while he was in the hospital recovering from a heart attack. Sadly, he died before he could see it published. The book was new to me, and I was really curious what kind of kids' book the guy who wrote James Bond would write. Turns out it's really sweet, a quintessential children's book about a heroic flying car. The story is based on the bedtime stories Ian had told his son. Spoilers. Really in this case, both the story kind and the kind on cars. Gosh, all the spoilers here. The book begins with the inventor, Caractacus Potts, creating a round hard candy with 2 holes in it that can be whistled through. His children, Jeremy and Jemima, love it, creating different sounds with them. Potts knows he has a truly great invention, and takes it to the Scrumptious Candy Company, where he sells the candy idea for £1,000. With the proceeds, he vows to buy the family a car. He, his wife, Mimsy, and the children go to look at cars, but they can't find one they like, until they reach a small mechanic's shop. In the back, under a tarp, he has an old broken-down race car that had been intended for the scrap heap. But the family decides it's the perfect car, and so Caractacus buys it. Jemima mentions to her brother on the way home that the license plate reads Gen 11, like Genie, which they both find very interesting. Then Potts takes the car back to his workshop and spends the next few months fixing it up. Finally, when it's finished, he brings it out for inspection, and the children find it now a gleaming, shining automobile. They take it for a test drive, and the drive is smooth and fast. Potts tells the kids that he thinks the car may have added some things on its own. He said that he would sometimes find it in the morning slightly different than how he'd left it the night before. They decide it needs a name, so they name it Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, after the sound it makes as it runs. The next day is very hot, so they put a picnic in the car and head to the beach, only to find that everyone else has had the same idea, and the road to the beach is a snarl of traffic. They get more and more annoyed, inching along, until Potts sees a light blinking on the dashboard, with the instruction to pull the knob. When Potts does, the car folds out wings and a propeller, and takes off above the line of cars, flying free above the traffic, and heads to the coast. Along the coast, they see all the beaches are crammed with people already, and so Chitty takes over steering and heads them out towards the ocean. After a surprised moment, Caractacus explains that Chitty is taking them to the Goodwin Sands, a huge sandbank just off the coast. They land on the sandbank, and Chitty stows her wings and propeller, and the family go to enjoy a day by the sea. They have their picnic and fall asleep, only to wake up when the tide is rising, covering the sandbank again and rapidly immersing Chitty herself. They all get into Chitty and move her out of the tide, but then a new light begins to blink on the dashboard, with instructions to turn the knob. Turning it makes the wheels flatten out, and the car is now motoring along like a motorboat. They race along, and when Jeremy says they're going the wrong way, Potts says that they are due for a holiday, and that France is only 25 miles across the channel. And so they zip across the English Channel, dodging huge seacraft in the shipping lanes, before landing at the base of the cliffs of Calais. Unfortunately, they land near sunset, with the tide coming in. They break up to search the cliffs for a cave or crevice above the tide line, and find one that had been invisible from the sea. It's quite large, so they drive Chitty into the cave, going further and further into the tunnel they find that had been mined out of the chalk cliffs. As they go, they're surprised by a huge cloud of bats flying out from the tunnel, and then again by a skeleton hanging directly in their path. The father reassures them that it's just there to scare off intruders. And then, when they hear eerie moaning, he points out the wind harp that's making the sounds. Further along, Chitty stops abruptly, turns off, and won't turn back on. Caractacus is confused and checks everything on the car, but the car seems like it should be fine. But then he looks around and notices a low tripwire. Examining it further, he sees that it is a charged wire, and would have shorted Chitty if she had gone further, except that Chitty had stopped in time. The father cuts the wire and they continue on, eventually reaching what looks like a blank wall. It seems like a dead end, but the father is convinced that there's a door in front of them, and so everyone gets out to search for a switch. Jemima finds it behind a big piece of rock, and when the switch is pressed, the two halves of the cave wall pull back, and the tunnel opens into a vast chamber full of crates and barrels. They get out to explore the illicit goods and find case after case of illegal weapons, machine guns, and bullets and explosives. They also find the name of the most notorious bank robber in England, Joe the Monster, and figure that this is his hidden stash of weapons, to be sent across the channel and smuggled into England under darkness. They decide to find the exit to the cave, as they have climbed quite far by now and think that the top of the cliff must be close. They find the cave exit, but then they ask each other what they should do about the weapons stash, and Jeremy says they should blow it all up. The father decides this is a good idea, so he piles all the dynamite and explosives, sets a fuse, and drives them all out of the cave and up to the exit, which is an old abandoned mine at the top of the cliff. He cuts the fuse, lights it, and then hightails it out of the quarry, not wanting to be near when the cave blows up. There is a tremendous explosion, fire blasts out of the cave entrance, and the cave ceiling crashes in, and a huge fireball rises up above it all. The Potts family goes to leave, but finds themselves facing a car that had blocked the road, which they learn belongs to Joe the Monster. He had seen them coming out of the cave and the explosion that had followed. He vows to kill them all, but the minute he gets close, Potts pulls the lever which snaps out the wings, knocking Joe down. Potts pulls around, trying to sweep the other gangsters, and then takes off above their heads, with them shooting wildly at the retreating car. The family makes it safely to Calais, where they check into a nice hotel and go to sleep for the night. Only Joe the Monster has tracked them to their hotel. In the middle of the night, he and his thugs break into the hotel and kidnap Jeremy and Jemima, and take them away with them to his hideout in the outskirts of Paris. Chitty is in the garage, but it knows that the children were taken, and it puts up a tiny radar dish to track the gangsters. In the morning, Chitty makes a huge racket on its horn, waking Potts and his wife and the rest of the hotel, and he goes down to see what the problem is. The noise stops as soon as he gets there, and he notices the tiny radar dish. Then his wife runs in and says the children are missing, kidnapped, and Potts realizes that Chitty somehow knew and has been tracking them. They grab their things and leave, using the radar dish to point them towards the children, and head up towards Paris and Chitty. The children are placed in the back room of a warehouse, where they're told they'll help the gangsters with a job. They're told they'll go into a chocolate shop called Bon Bon and ask to buy a large box of chocolates. Jeremy and Jemima figure out later that they're being used to set up the shop to be robbed, and they manage to punch out a warning on the franc note that they were given. They're taken to the shop, where they're supposed to run in just before closing and buy a box of chocolates. Jeremy gives the franc note to the owner, Monsieur Bonbon, who feels the punched-out note and reads it and understands, running to close and bar the door and slam down the metal shutters. Outside the shop, they all hear the sudden crunch of metal and glass. Chitty has tracked the children, and when it reached the Bonbon shop, had rammed the side of the gangster car as they had been trying to get away. Potts tackles Joe the Monster, and then the police show up to arrest Joe and his goons. The Pottses receive a large reward for the capture of Joe the Monster, and Monsieur Bonbon and his wife insist on hosting the Potts and gift them with armloads of chocolate. Finally, the Potts leave Paris, and Chitty opens her wings, and they set off for new adventures. And that's the original book for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I loved it. It's a super cute kids book with fantastic style and a really good hero in Chitty. The writing is as light as a feather. It reads beautifully as a children's book. You could read this to really young kids, 6 or 7, and they'd be fine. Or older. I enjoyed it too. I think anyone who's ever been stuck inching along in bad traffic has fantasized about their car growing wings and launching into the sky. I can honestly recommend this book to anyone. It was really good. And it's short, so even if you don't have a long attention span, it's okay, it's not long. The producer of all of Ian Fleming's James Bond films, Albert R. Broccoli, wanted to make a movie out of Chitty following the success of Mary Poppins. Roald Dahl was brought in to write the screenplay, but Broccoli hated his version and had it largely rewritten by director Ken Hughes. Dahl still gets co-writing credit, but he said later that they didn't use anything he wrote, so who knows what, if anything, was actually his. The movie for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was a musical starring Dick Van Dyke. Broccoli had wanted to replicate the success of the movie Mary Poppins, so he hired the composers, choreographers, and star from the movie. The Sherman Brothers came on to write the songs. Dick Van Dyke is back as a British hero, thankfully not bothering with the accent most of the time. The only reason Julie Andrews wasn't in it was because she turned down the part, as she didn't want to play a role like Mary Poppins again. I know I saw the movie as a kid, but it left surprisingly little impression on me. I remembered that I liked the movie and that it had a flying car, and that was about it. That meant I had a chance to watch the movie without much in the way of bias this time, which was kinda nice. The film begins with the car Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, running through several Grand Prix races in 1907, 1908, and 1909 before crashing to avoid a kid on the racetrack. We next see Chitty in a salvage yard, where two children, Jeremy and Jemima, have been playing on her. Hearing that Chitty is to be sold for scrap and melted down, they promise the scrapyard owner that their father will come with the money to buy Chitty and save her. On the way home, the children run into the road and are almost hit by a beautiful woman in a fancy car, who then offers to take them home. She tells them her name is Truly. Back at their house, they find Caractacus trying one of his crazy inventions. Truly goes into the lab with Caractacus to tell him that his children are running wild and skipping school. His lab is a wonderland of crazy inventions. Caractacus sends her off with an earful about minding her own business. The children ask their father to buy Chitty to save it from being melted down, and he says he'll see what he can do. He decides to try selling his candy flute to Lord Scrumptious. He and his kids go to the factory, only to run into Truly there, who it turns out is the daughter of Lord Scrumptious. She insists that her father meet with Potts about the candy flutes, but Scrumptious isn't interested, especially when they find out that the whistle calls dogs. Then the father tries to get the money by taking his mechanical hair-cutting device to the local fair, but it is a disaster. Potts ends up hiding from an angry customer by joining a group of dancers on stage, and earns the money in coins tossed to them on stage after the performance. He uses the funds to buy Chitty and brings her home back to his workshop. He works on her for months, and when he wheels it out of the garage, it's a beauty, a long gleaming car of shining wood and metal. They take it out for a test drive and a picnic, and they end up picking up Truly on the way. They go out to the beach and spend a nice day on the coast. Near the end of the day, the kids ask their father to tell them a story, so he says that the boat they see belongs to Baron Bombburst, who lives in Bulgaria and has sent agents to England to steal their car, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. We then launch into his story, where the tide has come in under Chitty, but Chitty inflates a raft underneath and zooms off as a boat, invading the Baron. They reach land, where the car puts his wheels down again and they drive off. The Baron then sends two spies to follow them and capture the car. Potts drops Truly off at her house, and she sings about how she has fallen in love with Potts. The two spies go through several zany, kooky plots to steal Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, none of which are successful. They capture Potts' father and carry him up to their dirigible. Potts and family follow in Chitty, accidentally driving off a cliff, and the movie goes to intermission. The movie comes back from intermission, and Chitty has sprouted wings and is now flying after the dirigible. The agents take Grandpa to Bulgaria, with Potts and the rest following. The agents go to the castle of the Baron, where Grandpa is confused for Professor Potts. The Baron wants Grandpa to build him a flying car like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and tells him that he'll be executed if he can't do it. Potts and family reach Bulgaria and land Chitty in a town near the castle. They hide the car and go into the town. Everyone stares at them as they go through town, especially at the children. They're told that children are forbidden in Bulgaria, but a friendly toy maker takes them in and hides them from the Baron's soldiers and from his child catcher. The toy maker hides them all in his cellar when the Baron's soldiers show up to search the town for the hidden children. They break down doors and bust windows, and the child catcher shows up with his long nose and his nets and cage. He says he can smell children. He goes into the toy maker's shop looking for them. He tells the toy maker that his nose is never wrong, and that if there are children there, the toy maker will die for hiding them. The child catcher finds the cellar door and goes below, saying, "You have to know where to look. Like cockroaches, they get under the floors, in the cracks in the walls, in the woodwork." But he doesn't find them, and he and his soldiers leave when the soldiers announce that they've found the flying car. It is taken up to the Baron's castle, and Potts realizes that he has to do something. The toy maker advises Potts to leave the country with the children, but he decides to help them anyhow when Potts says he needs to get up to the castle to save Grandpa. Truly leaves to go look for some food when the children say they're hungry. The child catcher comes back alone then, dressed in a colorful cape and hat, shouting that he's giving out chocolate and lollipops and ice cream, all for free. Jeremy and Jemima go outside to meet him, and he guides them into his disguised child cage. Once they're inside, the disguise falls off and he takes the caged children up to the castle. Potts and Truly go to save the children, and are taken by boat to a secret cave underneath the castle, where the rest of the town's children have been hiding. Potts promises to help them all. Potts and Truly are snuck into Baron Bombburst's birthday party as a mechanical music box dancer and a puppet. While the party guests are distracted, the children come into the room and tie the feet of the guests together and throw a net over them all. Potts and Truly rescue Jeremy and Jemima, and the rest of the children overthrow the castle, helped then by their parents. The Baron and Baroness try to escape through a trash chute, only to end up in the back of the child catcher's cage. Chitty shows up, and Potts, the children, Truly, and Grandpa fly off to safety, amidst the cheers of the villagers. We're then back at the beach, at the end of the story that Potts was telling his children, and they all go home. The children try to convince their father to marry Truly, but he disagrees, as she's rich and he's poor. They get home to find Lord Scrumptious and Grandpa talking together, with Scrumptious there to make a deal with Potts to buy the flute candy as a treat for dogs, which makes him rich. He goes to tell Truly and proposes to her. The movie ends with Potts and Truly flying off in Chitty. So ends a movie I'd completely forgotten about. I know I saw it, but I remembered nothing. It was good. Not great, but pretty good. The movie makes the whole adventure of Chitty flying into nothing more than a story that Potts tells his children. Do you know how confusing this is? Especially since the car then flies off at the end of the movie. When I was rewatching the movie, I didn't even realize this was all supposed to be a story at first. The transition was almost non-existent. They pulled a Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy wakes up from Oz and it was all just a dream, where this makes Chitty just a car. Boo. For framing devices that destroy the fantasy element of your story. And also for doing it in the most confusing way possible in this case. I honestly didn't realize it was all supposed to be just the story Potts was telling until the end of the movie. And if it's a story, does that mean the love song that Truly sings in the garden is also part of the story? Because that would be really weird, to start telling someone a story that involves them declaring their love for you. But how did it compare to the book? Well, it kept the inventor, Potts, and his candy whistles. In the movie, he tries to sell it to Scrumptious but fails initially, unlike in the book, where the sale provided the funds to buy Chitty. His wife Mimsy is gone, replaced by Truly, probably so the movie could have some romance. In the movie, Potts is an unsuccessful inventor who only makes money as a dancer, as I'm sure is the case for all true inventors in the real world. In the book, there was a sense that he wasn't that unsuccessful. He designed the candy whistle intentionally in the book, where it was a fluke in the movie. Then the movie steers pretty far from the book after this. Instead of the cliffs of Calais and Joe the monster, there is the land of Bulgaria and the Baron Bombburst. The Baron wants to steal Chitty, or its inventor, and his wife hates children and has them caught and imprisoned, or maybe killed, it's not really specified. But the bad guys do end up kidnapping the children. The child catcher seems like a terrifying stand-in for the Gestapo. Evidently, the child catcher was nightmare fuel to a generation of small children. That's probably as it should be. The scenes with the child catcher are a really effective way of showing the terror of being rounded up and imprisoned by the government. Everyone should have a visceral reminder once in a while that the Gestapo was evil. They killed roughly 1.5 million children, so I'd say a few nightmares about the child catcher are just fine. You only have to imagine that after the child catcher takes the children, that they're put in camps and then gassed. Nazis liked killing children. They were easy to catch, didn't fight back, and were easy to kill. Did this movie go surprisingly dark? Yes, it did, but it was only 20 years after the end of World War II, so this stuff was still very much in people's minds. Otherwise, the film is a pure kids movie. It's like a live-action cartoon, complete with a painted backdrop that looks like a tunnel, straight out of a Roadrunner cartoon. There are 2 bumbling spies, an evil baron in a castle, and an army of children. It's also a musical, and the songs and dance numbers are pretty good. The title song, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, is the kind of song that gets stuck in your head and won't leave. It has the melody of a gum commercial, where no amount of effort will get it out. It's really good, I guess? I don't know. Dick Van Dyke is good. He's a bit more serious in this role than he was in Mary Poppins, which suited both him and the movie well. I really liked Sally Ann Howes as Truly. She has a lovely voice and did a nice job. Her turn as the music box girl was awesome. So for book versus movie, this one was almost a tie, except for the fact that in the movie they turned Chitty's special abilities into a story. I don't like this, not just because it was confusing, but also because it destroys Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. So the point goes to the book. The movie is a good kids movie though. It's a giant live-action cartoon, and it has a flying car, which is really cool. I think most kids can get behind that. Side notes. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is kind of a James Bond story. I mean, it's by the guy who created James Bond, so it's not surprising they should share some similarities. James Bond always has some crazy tricked-out car, with buttons that launch rockets or something like that. It's not really that different from Chitty. The family in the book finds a secret evil lair hidden in a cliff, behind a stone door with a hidden latch. This is all classic Bond. They blow up the lair, and then there's a multinational evildoer who kidnaps someone that then needs to be saved. There's international travel, even a meal and a stay in a nice hotel in a foreign city. The movie is less James Bond than the book, but there they were trying to make a kids' musical. Though I will say, Truly Scrumptious is one of the best Bond girl names of all time. Any of the Bonds would approve, and would probably have a suitable comeback. Truly Scrumptious. Yes, I bet you are. The crew who made the previous James Bond movie all came over to work on Chitty Chitty Bang Bang 2 because it was a broccoli production, so they got a good experienced crew straight off of another movie. I spent some time trying to figure out just how well Roald Dahl and Ian Fleming knew each other. Simply asking the question led me down a fascinating research path. It turns out that both of them worked as intelligence agents for a branch of MI6 during World War II. They were both stationed at the same office in Washington, D.C., with a directive to veer opinion away from isolationism towards intervention to help the British. They, with a small group of others, used their charm, wit, and powers of seduction to make their way into the circles of power at the very top. America likes to pretend that they were always super enthusiastic about joining the war effort, but I can't tell how much of that is a kind of retroactive patriotism. America owes almost all of its current glory to what it achieved during and immediately after World War II. The US made themselves into the major world power from their victories, and it followed with decades of unsurpassed military and technological success. I'd say the bloom is off the rose a bit now. It's been a while since we've looked awesome, but the US kicked ass in World War II. We kicked everybody's ass. Germany, Japan, if it had an ass, we kicked it. And for most of my life, this fact was held up as the reason to be proud to be an American. I mean, we stomped the Nazis like they were a bunch of pansies. But there had been a time when the US was, quite understandably, reluctant to join a war an ocean away. Churchill understood the importance of getting the Americans to join as allies, so he had a secret group of Brits acting as spies in Washington to gather intel and to influence opinion. Among their number was Ian Fleming, who used his experience in MI6 to create James Bond, and Roald Dahl, creator of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. They certainly worked together, and they were friends, though I can't tell how close. The fact that they both had candy factories in their books was interesting, considering that both books were published the same year. Also, Roald Dahl was a spy? I mean, if ever there was a guy I wouldn't have guessed, it would be the man who wrote James and the Giant Peach. That guy. He seduced women. Many of them. Someday I'm going to do a book versus movie for one of his books. Fleming had based his magical car on a cross between an actual race car named Chitty Bang Bang, which was driven by Louis Zabrowski, whom Fleming had seen race as a kid, and Fleming's own standard tourer car. As far as I can tell, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was the first magical car. It certainly inspired others, and there have been some amazing magical cars since then. Herbie the Love Bug bears a lot of similarity to Chitty, being a partially sentient car who looks out for its owner and has special abilities. In Herbie's case, he was a Volkswagen Beetle that competes in racing. Then there's Kit from Knight Rider, which is an artificially intelligent computer-controlled car, with a voice that talks to Knight through his dashboard. And most prominent recently, there's the magical flying car from Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. This Ford Anglia is a lot like Chitty, not least because it's a flying car, but it also has a personality, spitting out the two young heroes at school, only to save them again later in the Enchanted Forest. One last note about the original illustrations for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I've tried to find a few of them to show in this video, but it's worth having a closer look at them if you can find one of the books with the original illustrations. They're strange, interesting pictures, sometimes vague and impressionistic, other times containing hyper-realistic images. It's this odd kind of modern art take on illustration, which is very different from most children's books. They're beautiful, interesting works, and they get more interesting the more you look at them. Motor on, everyone, and thanks for listening. This is Rose with Rose-Colored Movies.
Bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang,
Chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, ooh, you pretty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, we love you. And our pretty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, our fine four-fender friend. Bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, our fine four-fender friend.